Welcome back, everybody, to It's a Living with Shelly D. I'm trying to record at home, but my dog keeps barking and he's driving me crazy. But I can't go to the place where I normally record, or the quieter place, because the snow has snowed us in. I'm going to try, so if you hear a bark or a squeak in the background, please forgive me. So I'm going to go ahead and read from Chapter 15 of Confessions of a Job Hopper. Chapter 15, It Just Keeps Happening. It wasn't long after I saw an ad for a hair salon needing help. Job number 53, Susie's Hair Works. I was having major flashbacks of Reenie's House of Beauty, but this lady seemed like a really neat lady and very good-hearted, and I was taking the tiny flow of commission walk-ins while I was kind of hoping something else would come through. Oh, well, this was on the west side of town, and I couldn't help but think what the psychic had mentioned to me, the sales position on the east side of town. Well, JC's salon was on the east side of town, and they called me during that time, offering me an hourly pay with company benefits. I was happy, but the happiness soon waned. I can't say I was feeling the love of being back in the salon, though the drama, the fighting, the annoying customers. I was feeling just about done with that, not to mention I developed severe neck and joint pain. On those days, some days I could barely turn my head. My neck was so inflamed. The insurance was too expensive for me to purchase on my low salary. I hopped to a newly opened These department store, which I won't say the full name of it, and got a pretty good position selling cosmetics over the counter for a major brand. I felt okay at first. The pay was pretty good. The managers were not. They were underhanded, immoral, greedy, demanding, and just plain mean at times. I don't like to work somewhere where mean competition is encouraged. I tried to maintain a good attitude, but it was growing harder. There goes the dog. Then my former manager from JC's salon paid me a visit. She was looking around at the beautiful marbled floor, nicely lit, clean store, compared to her little rundown, musty, mold-filled salon in the junkie salon, badly needing renovations. And she mentioned to me, well, I used to work for a cosmetic line, and I loved it. And I told her I'm not in love with it. Well, the work was as hard as marble floors and fiercely competitive. Her eyes lit up. She jumped at the chance to ask me to come back and work with her at JC's salon. That was a first. I'd never really been asked to return to a place that I'd left. I actually was kind of flattered. Going back, she had promised that I wouldn't have to do hair because of my arthritis pain. I could run the front desk and maybe even lead into the assistant manager position. Most of the stylists seemed kind of confused about my return and my new position there. It didn't seem like I was anything more than a receptionist, and I surely didn't want to tell anyone I was trying to be groomed for management for fear of some jealousy. I love organizing, and I felt like I was making a difference in handling the stock and cleaning supplies. The manager had asked me to open up the salon at 7 a.m. and run reports. I thought she was grooming me for managing, but now I think she was just being taken advantage of me. I always showed up on time making the coffee, and I was trying to maintain some stability in that salon. I actually liked the manager at first. She was a little different, though. She once thought the salon had bad spirits in it and had a lady bring in some holy water and sprinkle it all around the chairs. She really did inappropriate things also. She was teasing another stylist, an ethnic roots, and she bought a black Barbie doll and hung it with a hangman's noose over her station. I was afraid I was dealing with a crazy boss again. Then she started asking me to try and help her get rid of 2 stylists. I just was not into playing her games at all, and came clean to the girls and let them know the reason why they had missing appointments is because the manager directed me not to book them. I really felt bad for them. None of the stylists could stand her, and we went to the district manager to complain about her bizarre behavior. He shut us down hard. Thinking back, I should have contacted the corporate office, but I was just so burnt out of that place. I just thought it was easier to leave. If you're worn out from reading this, imagine how worn out it was to live it. Or hearing this, I should say. It seemed to me at the time I wasn't doing anything odd. It seemed like I was just, if there was a problem that wouldn't get me better and I had no future, I'd just leave. I think I was scared sometimes. I stayed in an unhappy marriage for almost 10 years, losing all of my young 20s and hoping and praying things would improve, only to be the unhappiest I ever was in my whole life. I felt so betrayed, and I think it may have led to my fear of commitment. Commitment to a job, a relationship, or even a hair color. Besides having this fear, I felt restless all the time. It was like I wanted a new adventure all the time. I guess learning new jobs was fun until the newness wore off, or I discovered the ugly truths about people. I tried to go to a counselor once, before the psychic. The counselor said, "No, you need to go on medication," but I didn't really want to at that point. Looking back, maybe I should have. I didn't do myself any favors by this behavior. I was always ready to self-destruct and walk out. There was a small photography studio across from the salon I was at, and one day I walked over there, asked the manager, "Can you please hire me?" I told her I want to leave this salon, and I'm creative. I'd be a good worker. So she hired me. I had a blowout with my salon manager when she found out I was leaving the salon, and she started stalking me in the parking lot. She really creeped me out. I told her bluntly, "Look, I'm not playing your sick games." She seemed shocked and hurt that I turned on her because she thought I was on her side. I really don't think I handled the situation the best. In fact, to admit fault, I don't think I handled any problem well. I wanted to be a problem solver, but I was running away from problems, from lack of patience and maturity. So I happily thought I would become a photographer. I'd never really taken any good pictures in my life, but of course it was another new adventure to learn. The manager gave me a super quick rundown of poses and prices. Most of the clientele were babies, and we had to remember at what age the poses were doable for them. My boys were grown by then. My oldest had just recently entered in the Marines, and my youngest started his first year of college. I had a hard time even remembering, could a baby sit up at 4 or 5 months old? So when the young parents of sweet little newborns come in for the first time, I froze. Forgetting all the poses my manager had run through with me, I asked the couple to lay the baby on the table. They just took him over to the hard table and laid him down on his back like they were offering a sacrifice. I'm sorry, it's just funny. I was about 5 feet away, wondering what to do next. I held the camera remote in my hand. Oh gosh. Oh my gosh, I apologize. I haven't read this in a long time. Oh goodness. I was about 5 feet away and I held the remote in my hand. We all just stood there looking at the baby who resembled a little Thanksgiving turkey with its little legs and arms waving in the air. I started clicking away, capturing. I may have to re-record this, I don't know. But I sat there capturing a distant scene of a small babe in a diaper laying on a black table. It was a horrible scene. Luckily, the manager ran over and saved me. "Well, let's try this." And she pulled some padding around the baby, and then it started making a little more sense. I watched as she created the cutest little poses for this little guy. Oh, the pictures were remotely carried to the computer outside the photo studio, and I had to stand there and click through all of them, using different enhancements to help make the best of the shots. It was a relatively easy sell and pretty fun. The paychecks were less than fun at $8 an hour. I knew this had to be temporary. Oh, I don't even care if this isn't professional. It doesn't matter. Chapter 16, Corporations Are Evil. I had my application in a local financial company for a customer service rep, and I received a letter shortly after starting the photo studio that I had gotten the job. Well, I told my boss I'm going to be leaving. She was the nicest person ever I ever worked for, and really one of the most easygoing. There were no bad blow-ups or even bad attitudes. Although one hiccup was I left my little purse under the cash register and someone stole it. I think I knew which coworker it was, but I couldn't prove it. I started the financial company in the mortgage division. I had no idea about mortgages, no experience, but they did a couple weeks of training, enough to know how to handle customer questions on the phone and where to direct their calls. I enjoyed learning the new job. I liked most of the people I worked with, too. I got a little burnout over the rudeness of the customers, but I listened to the other reps and realized it was just not personal. You just apologize blandly over the phone and don't get too involved with the caller. I can't help myself. I get overly involved in my jobs, and they consume me and become me. I couldn't stand some of the politics of this financial company. I felt like they took advantage of the clients. In fact, this particular corporation, who shall remain nameless, went under investigation when the housing market crashed and their CEOs took the golden parachutes to bail out of the corporations after it all came tumbling down, leaving the customers financially bankrupt with upside-down mortgages. Hard times fell on America back then, and the housing market disintegrated into a deep recession. My company laid off 60 loan officers in one day. Needless to say, I was looking for my next gig. I also tried to work again part-time hairdressing. That would have been the third time at that particular franchise. They had new owners, which I met and liked, and they were in the salon a lot, but that didn't work out too well. Meanwhile, back at the mortgage company, things had gotten so bad there were whispers of who's going to get laid off next. It's not going to be me, I thought, and I started putting my resume out there again. I had been at the mortgage company just about a year, was actually not looking forward to starting over again, but I saw an ad for a manager at another photo studio. I thought, maybe that's a possibility. I like the idea of being the manager again. Well, they called me, and it started out very strange. The regional assistant manager called me at 9 p.m. Here's a tip for you. When looking for a job, disregard any job offer that comes to you after hours. It's unprofessional, and it shows that a company is very disorganized. That's a bad sign. But of course, I always seem to disregard the warning signs. I got the interview and I got the job, probably not because they were so impressed, but they were so desperate. I had noticed that the regional assistant manager was pretty sloppy and dirty. He was missing a front tooth. Well, I wondered if maybe they didn't pay him enough to look professional. I was amazed that they would keep someone like him in a photo studio. The studio was inside a super center store, and as cheap as they come. I wasn't too embarrassed because I was the manager. I noticed the workers looked sloppy and disheveled as much as the regional manager. One girl had no teeth at all. She admitted she'd been a meth addict most of her life and it had ruined her teeth. They put me in 3 different stores before putting me in my own store as a manager. I was then told I wouldn't make the schedule or have hiring or firing privileges or the ability to make any changes. I was just really used to be worked to death. Most of the time I was on my own, shooting, selling, and answering the phones, making appointments, all the aspects of this little photo studio. I had started right after Thanksgiving. I know most retailers do most of their hiring, but it's virtually impossible to train someone during a rush. They throw you to the wolves to see how well you hold up after the feeding frenzy. I dealt with so many different customers, I actually thought I took some pretty cute pictures, but that did not matter. What mattered was the dollar bills you collected. I actually got voted best customer service by the customers in the region, but that didn't matter. Was I producer of dollar bills or not? I certainly improved the situation, but that did not matter. Sometimes the upper corporate management have a hard time thinking outside the box. They only understand the formula. Stick to the formula. Sell accordingly and everything will be fine. Wrong. They forget to throw in the human element. People are fickle. They are the ones who will ultimately dictate what something is worth. I wasn't bad at selling, but sometimes I would use little unorthodox ways of getting results. I would throw in something as an incentive or promise a promotion for a future service. Well, I felt like I went through double HELL at that studio. Although some customers were fun, many were angry and bad-tempered, demanding, uncultured, low-class brutes. I would leave at night in the middle of winter feeling exhausted and beat up. The district manager would have those conference calls that were absolutely worthless. She never left the comfort of her own her home office. She would view the studio from her home via the camera and then look at numbers all day. I'm more of a people person. I had to be up close and personal to feel the customers' vibes, try to bond with them. I never had even met the district manager until one day after the Christmas rush and after the first of the new year when she came in the studio and waved at me. I was doing a photo shoot, and I had no idea who this person was. I saw her sit at the computer and start going through the previous shots. I finished my shoot and was working with the customers, and when I finished them up, I noticed this lady who seemed to be knowing what she was doing was staring angrily at me. After I checked the customers out, I turned to see the angry lady crossing her arms, her face red. "I've only been here 5 minutes, and you're already giving me a heart attack," she screamed. I looked at her, replied, "First of all, who are you?" Then, in a bipolar episode, she smiled and held out her hand. "I'm Ruth, your district manager." "Oh," I replied and shook her hand and smiled back. "Nice to meet you." Then her smile fastly turned into a frown. She was angry about everything, screaming about this and that, how I didn't show the right poses, and on and on. I really didn't care until she said, "You have no ability to run this studio." Then I just tried to reason with her. "Look, I understand what you might feel confused right now, but let me assure you, things have been going pretty smoothly." I could almost see the pleasures of the corners of her mouth turned upward in a cruel gesture. She enjoyed yelling and getting people to grovel. She crossed the wrong one. I was sick and tired of being treated like a paid slave. Where does she get off thinking you can yell and degrade someone and empower yourself? Not me. Not again, and not this time. I told her, "Look, who do you think has been putting in over 80 hours a week in this store since before Christmas? I have been running this studio. Now I haven't had a break, and I have another appointment coming in, so I have to get something to eat." She seemed shocked that she'd met her match. "You walk out the door, you're done." I started collecting my things. "Well, then good luck to you," I said. You have a family coming in less than an hour. I hope you remember how to take good pictures. I collected my things I had brought in over the past few months, several costumes I used for the studio, little hats, accessories, a television with a DVD. I entertained the children as they waited. I loaded it all up. Ruth started shaking without a word. I used a shopping cart to wheel out all my stuff out of the studio. On the way out, Ruth screamed at me one last time. I don't need you. I could hire 2 people for $6 an hour to do what you're doing. Well, that really made no sense. I was only getting $10 an hour. She wasn't doing the math. I reached the parking lot and called the regional assistant, Mr. Toothless Manager, and told him I felt like Ruth came to the studio unintentionally to start a fight with me or fire me. His reply was, yeah, well, I had a feeling after the holidays that's what would happen. This was how they worked. They would hire managers, work them ridiculous amounts of hours, and then fire them during the slow season, paying newly hired hourly's tiny wages. Well, you would think people would catch on, but I never thought a corporation would actually allow this behavior to be ongoing. I didn't want Ruth to get away with this ruthless behavior. I called a lot of the employees, and they began to tell me how many times she'd used this intimidating tactic and how many of the previous managers had been fired for no good reason. I contacted a lawyer about a civil lawsuit against this corporation, and the lawyer told me, okay, if you can get 8 people involved, I'll see what I can do. 2 more managers were fired after me, and they were on board. I started getting calls from other cities, studios that I'd never met, but apparently the word had spread that I was out to get revenge on Ruth, and they all wanted to get involved. I called the corporate headquarters and voiced a complaint. I got other people to call and voice their complaints. Eventually, they fired Ruth and Mr. Toothless as well. I never got my job back or offered any compensation, and I just let the lawsuit idea fall. I really just wanted to have Ruth get what she deserved, unemployment. Who knows what happened to her, but 2 years after I left, I got a small check in the mail from the corporation saying they had reviewed the records. Apparently someone did follow through with a civil action suit, and I had been compensated for missing hours and break time. It wasn't much, but I'm glad they admitted in some way a faulty corporate management. That's the end of chapter 16. Well, I hope you enjoyed it with all the interruptions and laughing and barking and buzzing of my phone. And so I'm going to go ahead and do an interview tomorrow. I think it's going to be a really good one. Thank you. Enjoy your life.